Okay, this video is going to be part 2 in my series about atheism. More specifically, I'm addressing Christians who have misconceptions about atheism. And when I get into discussion with theists about religion, they often repeat the same litany of cliches and assumptions that we hear too often. And so I'm trying to dispel some of the more popular notions and move on to the real discussion. This one probably is the most arrogant I've ever heard. I hear it quite often, and it probably pisses me off more than anything else that could come out of a Christian's mouth when we're discussing atheism. And it's this: you're not really an atheist. Maybe you think you don't believe in God, but deep down, everyone believes in God. And they might phrase it in several different ways, but at its core, it's pretty much the same argument, which is they deny your atheism altogether. They tell you that they can know, according to their Bible, that you, the atheist, must know that God exists, and that you're just denying it, or you're afraid to admit that God exists, or you're denying it because you don't want to live the Christian life. But they tell you basically that you're not what you say you are. You aren't really an atheist. Somewhere deep down in your heart, you got to know that God exists. So that's not really even an argument. It's a non-argument. They're in fact denying the existence of your atheism, which to me is the epitome of arrogance. It's condescending, indignant bullshit. So please, if you're a Christian and you're watching this, don't ever use that. Don't ever say that to an atheist, because nothing could anger us more. And that's understandable. It'd be like me saying to you that you're not really a Christian. Somewhere deep down in your heart, you have to know that God doesn't exist, but you're too afraid to admit it to yourself because you're afraid of death, or you want to be comforted by the thought of God's existence. But deep down, you know that this is just it. It would be equally as condescending if I were to say it to you, and equally as silly and untrue and unuseful as an argument. But to those of you who would continue to use this cliche, this assumption, I have to ask you, what do you think exactly I would gain from lying about being an atheist? What would I have to gain from lying to myself and from telling myself there's really no God, when deep down, supposedly, according to you, I know that Jesus is Lord and that God exists? What do I stand to gain from that? What benefit is there? See, people usually do things because it is of some kind of benefit to them. I don't know about most people, but if I knew that God existed, if I believed in God, I would just admit it to myself and I would be a happy, faithful Christian. I don't have any problem with that. I was a Christian for most of my life, and when I was a Christian, I was very proud of being a Christian, and I wanted, like most, to tell everyone else about my faith. But there was no shame in it. I came slowly to not believe in God when I started to learn more about philosophy and history and theology, and my faith slowly just creeped out of the door, and it was gone. And the concept of God, especially a monotheistic personal God, became literally unbelievable to me. In fact, this whole assumption about you're not really an atheist, you just say you are, you're just deluded, hits close to home in the sense that it's really insulting, because transitioning from faith to non-faith, from Christianity to atheism, was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do in my life. And I've already talked about this in a previous video, so I'm not going to get into it. But it wasn't easy for me. It's not easy to tell yourself that something you've believed all of your life is fundamentally false, and to erase the blackboard and start over building your worldview from the ground up. That's not an easy task. So, and I can't speak for every atheist personally. I've heard some atheists speak, like Christopher Hitchens, who, in their opinion, they're happy that God doesn't exist. Their idea of God is that it would be totalitarian, it would be like a dictatorship of the mind, because God can hear your every thought, and controls you in a sense. He controls your destiny. And to Christopher Hitchens, theism, if it were true, would be a nightmare. To me, I don't see it the same way. If I could believe in God, I would. If it was feasible to me, if it was believable, then I would happily accept that. But it's just not. To me, becoming a Christian again would be akin to unlearning the ABCs. I've learned so much about philosophy and history, I can't just forget everything I know, turn off that switch of skepticism and tell myself that God exists, repeating it over and over again like Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz, wishing herself back to Kansas. That's not the way it works. There are many times when I wish I could believe in God. It's quite a comfortable worldview. I can't imagine anything actually being more pleasing than to imagine that you were created as an individual in the eyes of God because He loves you eternally, and when you die, if you believe in Him, you'll get to go live in an eternal paradise. What could be more pleasing than that if it were true? Nothing that I can think of. So, if I thought it was true, I would believe it. That simple. I don't think it's true. I don't think the history is there. I don't think the theology or the philosophy is there. And science has tore a big hole in the ass of religion over the past 200 years. If I ever have some type of personal event of revelation from God or some, profound sign that I'm meant to believe, then I'll believe. So Christians, do yourself a favor. If you're discussing atheism or talking to an atheist or making a video about atheism, never bring that up. Never have the audacity and the arrogance and the indignation to tell someone what they really believe. If I did it to you as a Christian, you would think I was a complete asshole. Yet when you do it to atheists, you think it's going to grant us some kind of profound insight or something. It doesn't. It just pisses us off because of the level of stupidity required to make and actually believe such a statement that, we really believe there's a God, we're just pretending, or deep down our heart. Please, take that deep down in your heart nonsense and shove it up your ass, literally. Quite simply, that's just not an argument. You could say that to anyone about anything, really, and it would just piss them off. Well, you don't really believe that. You just think you believe that. You need to do some soul searching because deep down, there's something in you. There's something in you pulling you towards faith. You have to know that God exists. You must know. And beyond that, I see it as a sign of just utter weakness and denial on the part of the Christian. When they say that to me, it's like, okay, so your faith is so weak and so fragile that in order for you to maintain your faith and your sanity, you literally have to tell yourself that atheists don't even exist out there in the world because we're such a threat to your belief that you have to deny our very existence. That says something about the nature of your faith and how weak it is. I mean, when you tell the atheist, deep down, you must know that God exists, you're saying that, you can't even acknowledge the fact that people who don't believe in God exist. You're not even granting us that freedom of really believing what we say we believe. And so to me, that just screams insecurity in regards to your faith. So yeah, if someone says they're an atheist, they probably mean it. And they're not just saying it because they're ignorant or deluded or stupid, because that's what you're saying to us when you deny us the luxury of saying we don't believe in God. You're saying that we're stupid, essentially, that we're deluded, that we need to look deeper or something like that, assuming that we haven't. It's just a very totalitarian outlook on things, where in order for you to maintain a secure faith, you have to tell yourself, you have to believe that in their minds, in their hearts, everyone really believes the exact same thing as you, whether they're conscious of it or not, or whether they're willing to admit it or not. Regardless of what they say, they really believe the exact same thing as you, that Jesus is God and this and that, but for various reasons they haven't come to terms with it like you have because you're so great. So don't use that argument, please. Nothing is more upsetting and arrogant and silly and empty and vapid at the same time.